Welcome to the Week Ahead, a podcast by SPM Intelligence. I'm your host, Veronica Pana Ikube. Every Friday, we explore stories that are shaping our continent. Nigeria's non-oil export rose 19.6% to 3.3 billion in H1 2025 from a $2.7 billion a year earlier. Export volumes have reached 4.04 million metric tons, with cocoa production making up to 35% of the value. Could this momentum signal a lasting shift in Nigeria's economic structure? Vice President Kashim Shettima announced that Bola Tinubu administration has directed that the planting of 100 million oil palm trees nationwide, alongside plans for an oil palm production processing plant in Ondo State, as part of efforts to boost agriculture and diversify Nigeria's economy. Could this scale of investment make Nigeria a major global player in palm oil production? And will local farmers be equipped to benefit from this opportunity it creates? The US is looking for ways to stop deadly attacks on Christians in Africa. Recent violence includes 49 killed in the DRC and 27 in Nigeria, with militants forcing people to flee their homes. Over 150,000 have died in the last decade. Survivors say they are told to convert or be killed. Will global action help end the killing, or is it just local politics at play? Joining us today for further insights is Sheyi Owojulube, a policy analyst. Welcome, Sheyi, to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Let's start with our first story, where we see Nigeria's non-oil export growth. Beyond the headlines, what structural or policy changes have actually enabled this 19.6% rise in non-oil exports in the country?
Well, to begin with, I think that what we are seeing now is a combination of several factors. One is that the work that has been done over the years by the NEPC, that's the Nigerian Export Promotion Council, and what the current Minister of Trade, that's Madam Jumoke Oduwole, has done in the past, also being an advisor on the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. All of that has come together, combined with the higher international prices we're seeing. You know that over the past few months, the cocoa prices have been on the upside. And so all of this together is what are some of the factors that we can credit, or that we can attribute this increased non-oil exports to. We should also not deny the fact that locally, a lot of Nigerian manufacturers and farmers are beginning to see the high side or the upside to value addition to their products. And so gone are the days, even though from this data we saw that cocoa beans is still the most exported non-oil commodity, there are other products that have now come on board. And so as a result, in half year 2025, that's January to June 2025, data showed that 236 distinct products were exported compared to 11 in the past. So really, it's a combination of different factors, and we hope that this trend can continue.
I mean, it's interesting that you say it's a lot of many factors that are contributing, some policy, some just even farmers taking interest and exploring exportation of goods. But how do you think Nigeria can maintain this momentum, right? So we're seeing more goods go out of the country. How can we continue to ensure that this is sustainable and not just a kind of one-off kind of for the country?
Well, to ensure sustained momentum, there are a number of things that will happen. So let me even just add that fertilizer, urea, was the second most exported commodity in half year 2025. And we know that that's one of the products that's coming out of the Dangote refinery. So it will not be surprising as the year goes by if Nigeria's urea and fertilizer exports increase even further, right? So speaking of what can be done to sustain the momentum, the first is that Nigeria needs to take advantage of the current geopolitical tensions. Um, Even though we're talking about non-oil exports, even with crude oil, we see that some US refiners are now turning attention to Nigeria for crude oil. That's because of the sanctions and the tariffs that have been imposed. Even though Nigeria has also had some tariffs imposed on it, people and manufacturers globally are still looking for the countries that have the commodity they're looking for at the best advantage, that's at the best possible price. So Nigeria can take advantage of the current geopolitical trade tensions to even export more. Another thing we can explore is hammering down on the advantages we get from the AFCFTA. That's the after, as some people might call it. We can take advantage of that to even boost exports to African countries or countries within that agreement, and of course ECOWAS, which is closer to home. So these two on a political level, these two things will can work to Nigeria's advantage. On a um on a business level, if I may use that term, on a business level, the government could also increase its investments, like providing improved seedlings to farmers. Of course, the recent tax reforms have ensured that small businesses will get some sort of tax relief, which will free up capital that they can then use to expand their businesses and innovate. So those are some of the things that Nigeria can do to sustain the momentum. And of course, the elephant in the room is Nigeria's infrastructural deficit. So improved investment in infrastructural development will definitely have a positive impact on Nigeria's non-oil exports.
I agree with you on those points that you have raised, especially on our infrastructural side, because like if Nigeria tries to address those issues, you would see more people coming into different sectors and producing. I think that a lot of small producers in Nigeria have left or have faced like some back, how would I put it, like basically they faced like some difficulties or challenges in the market that have made them either to limit the quantity at which they produce and not expand, or just even leave the market as well. But I mean, it's interesting to see those numbers going up. Let's move on to our second story where we're seeing the president give a directive for the planting of 100 million oil palm trees nationwide. There's also the plan for an oil palm processing plant in Ondo State. So we're seeing Nigeria kind of try to diversify the economy and go into palm oil production. I know for a very long time Nigeria was some of the one of the global players in palm oil production. Do you think that this new investment would make Nigeria return to be a global player in the palm oil production? And will local farmers be equipped to benefit from the opportunity that this creates?
Well, investment in oil palm, I think that the government should not just pay lip service to investment in oil palm, right? Because back in the 60s, like you mentioned, Nigeria was actually the world's largest producer and exporter of palm oil. But now you have countries like Singapore, I mean, countries like Indonesia and Malaysia, pardon my error, countries like Indonesia and, Malaysia who now account for 80% of the global production. So, upstaging or displacing those two countries will require deliberate, I mean deliberate and intentional work and a lot of investments. That's a lot of money, right? So this 100 million, announcing that the government wants to plant 100 million palm trees. It's a good initiative, and the way we can quickly begin to see results is if we plant the high yield varieties, right? So you know that thanks to technological advancement, some crops now have high yield varieties that would even produce much more volume compared to the traditional varieties, right? So doing this would so before Nigeria can even talk about um exporting palm oil or exporting the byproducts from the oil palm tree, we should even look at closing the domestic gap at home. Despite Nigeria being the fifth largest producer of oil palm in the world, we are still a net importer of palm oil and other varieties. So I think what we should do is, as we plant these trees, we should first focus on closing our own domestic supply gap. When we close that gap, and then the vice president also talked about building an oil palm processing facility that will then push forward the industry, the palm oil sector now, not crude oil sector, the palm oil sector, towards using modern equipment. Just to draw a parallel example, we can all see how over the years the government was trying without much success to revamp the refineries, that's the crude oil refineries. But we can see what has happened in the space of about 2 years since the Dangote refinery came on board. That's what happens when you have a facility, a processing facility that is built with modern tools and technology. So really, the government needs to, that's why Nigeria is producing substantial amount of oil palm. The processing practices in this sector are still traditional ways. So there needs to be a modernization of the processing practices in this sector. The government also needs to drastically increase production. And so if 100 million is what it will require for a start, we should not stop at 100 million. We should look at even expanding or planting more trees, because the oil palm tree is one that is sensitive to environmental issues such as deforestation. So as some of the other trees grow old, there should be a plan for replacing those trees with younger ones that will make sure that whatever progress we see from those 100 million trees that has to be planted will be sustained.
I do agree with you, and a sustainable plan has to be put in place in case of issues that come up from climate change, deforestation as well. So the government has to strategize in also the implementation of this project. I mean, I look forward to it. It's beautiful to see the country trying to diversify, and something that was key that you pointed out was palm oil production now becoming and using more advanced tools as opposed to using the old ways of processing palm. Because once we do that, there's you I think that we'll get more quality, more quantity as well. And it would be
Exactly.
better for exporting our goods as well. It would reach the standard of
You're right.
export. Yeah. So let's move
You're
over
right.
to our last story. We're seeing the US is looking for ways to stop deadly killings of Christians in Africa. So the Donald Trump administration is speaking up against violence on Christians in sub-Saharan Africa. Do you think that this global action is going to help end the killings or force governments in regions that are facing this, I mean, including Nigeria as well, to be able to address it? Or do you think it's just a political play that the US is trying to do? What do you think? What are your thoughts on this issue?
Well, I don't think we should just put it under the category or under the tag of being just local politics. I think it's more than that. To answer the first part of your question, where you said, would it make the governments of those countries sit up? I would say it's unlikely because it's not the first time during the previous Donald Trump administration, like his first term as president, Nigeria was actually designated a country of particular concern, and that was lifted when Joe Biden became the US president. And some of the things that happened when a country is tagged a, is designated a country of particular concern is that they now undergo there's a likelihood of more sanctions and restrictions on the government, including trade-related sanctions. Sometimes we've even seen instances of travel bans on officials from that designated country, and there is increased scrutiny on the activities going on in that country. But as I was saying earlier, as regarding the second part of your question, the conflict in Nigeria is not just a Christian Muslim thing. We have seen cases where even traditional worshippers and atheists have also been victims on more than one or two occasions of they've been targeted basically. We had the issue in Kwara State. There was also an issue where an atheist was jailed for making certain posts on Facebook, right? But really, the crux, I think that it's important to understand that the crux of this matter and why it may appear like Christians are targeted is that some of these issues stem from traditionally Christian farming communities who then have clashes with the Muslim nomadic cattle rearers. And so when you have cases of cows destroying some people's farmlands, and then there is an attack, and then there are reprisal attacks, and everything just balloons and goes out of control. Another thing is that in countries where large areas remain ungoverned, meaning that there is no government presence there, and we definitely know that there are several parts in Nigeria that are ungoverned, that government security presence is really low or relatively low. There is that lacuna that terror groups now take advantage of and begin to govern those areas. And so in Nigeria, for instance, we've had cases where armed groups demand taxes from residents in communities like that. So, and these things have occurred in areas that have remained largely ungoverned. So it's not just local politics. It's a battle for resources, and it's sad that it has now taken a religious connotation.
Thank you very much, Shay, for joining us on today's episode. And to all our listeners, this podcast is by SBM Intelligence. You can access our podcast by searching for SBM Intelligence anywhere you find podcasts. For deeper insights into our work, you can visit our website at sbmintel.com. Remember to connect with us on all our social media platforms. You can find us on X, Facebook, Blue Sky, and LinkedIn at SBM Intelligence. Shay, it's such a pleasure to always have you on the podcast and hear your insights as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That's all for today, and thank you for listening.